Hi and welcome back to BookTube with Amy. So I was actually off work last week for like 4 or 5 days in a row, which was just brilliant. So I got so much reading done. I've got 3 books to talk to you about today, and I'm halfway through another 2 books because all I did was drink tea and read and edit and read and drink tea and edit and read and drink tea, have a bath, then read and drink more tea. It was great and just like the best way to spend time off ever. So I got quite a bit of reading done, and I read quite a mix of books this week actually. So first up, I read Euphoric Recall by Aidan Martin, and I buddy read this with Ange from Angie's Book Chatter. So I bought us both a copy of this for her Christmas. Cheeky to buy myself a book for her Christmas, but I knew when I read about this book that she would really love it, and I feel like we read so much working class fiction together that it would be cool to read a working class non-fiction. So this is a memoir, and Aidan grew up in Livingston, which is like 2 towns over from where I originally grew up. We both grew up in West Lothian, so I thought that it would be interesting to read about his experiences, to see if they were similar to some of my experiences growing up in a similar background and in a similar area, and they were strikingly similar. So this talks about Aidan's sexual and substance addiction and how he came through the other side of it. And it's a bit difficult to rate this one because when I'm rating it, I am not rating Aidan's experiences or rating his life story. So I am basing my rating purely on the writing and less upon the content, I think. So it was a really good book, and it was really interesting to read. I feel like Aidan has been very candid and very open in this book, which is just, it takes guts to do. So like, credit to him in that regard. I feel like people might read it and I don't necessarily feel like if they were an addict that they might see themselves reflected in all of the story, but I think that they would see themselves reflected in some of the story, and I think that it was very reflective of how growing up in West Lothian was, down to the drugs and the violence and having to grow up really quickly at such a young age because of the amount of drama that you need to deal with at school, and not just from the kids but the teachers, and you don't really get support in terms of healthcare, and you know, it's a difficult place to grow up. And so I really connected to Aidan on that side of things because, like I say, we both grew up within the same area, and so it was really I don't want to say empowering, I don't think that's the word, but it was really nice, I guess, for me to see somebody from my neck of the woods write a book that was so honest and so candid and so reflective of some of my experiences as well. I think that it was really good to see myself represented. I've read a lot of Scottish working class fiction on the channel, specifically with Ange, and so it was really nice to see a non-fiction as well. I believe that a lot of the fiction that I have read is heavily influenced by the author's own lives and upbringings, but it was really nice to see it done in non-fiction, so I enjoyed that aspect of it. But there were some things in this book that I didn't get along with. So it's a memoir, like I say, and at the end of each chapter it felt like Aidan almost wanted you to keep reading, so he'd put like wee taglines in to like almost make you want to keep going. And it was like, oh, but like little did we know what was yet to come and things like that. And for me that just pulled me out yet, because like I was so invested in his story that I didn't need any encouragement to want to read on. I wanted to read on for him, and I don't know if that was his choice or like if it was an editor or a publisher's choice, but I just feel like that was the wrong call, because it then just detracted away from the story for me. It felt like I was maybe reading a bit of a teasy teenage diary as opposed to like a really hard-hitting memoir. And I feel as well like it makes such a point in the beginning about saying like people might feel like the things that I'm talking about are dramatised or exaggerated, and they aren't. These are just my experiences. But then when he's putting things like that in, like, it almost does make it seem dramatised, because it makes it seem like you are dramatising it for effect. So I felt like that was a bit of a contradiction, and I really didn't enjoy that, and it was literally like every single chapter. The other thing that I didn't enjoy about the writing is I feel like he tried to include lots of different references, and I've seen this done really well. Specifically the Young Team by Graham Armstrong, you know, he references a lot of different music at that time of his youth, and I felt like that was done really well. I feel like Aidan tried to do something similar, and it just missed the mark for me, because instead of just sticking to like the one type of reference, he was referencing quite a few different things, and I feel like they were just sort of jutted in at points. I totally get why authors do this. They're trying to make it more relatable, and you know, I think that if you understand these references, then you'll maybe also understand a wee bit more where he's coming from as an author. So I get it. I just felt like they were a wee bit jarring for me, and I didn't enjoy that aspect of it. Also feel like there were some things in the book that I wish were explored a bit more. There's some themes in here about Aidan's relapse, and I just feel like they were sort of skimmed over because he wanted to get to the happy ending and get to the part of the story where he was, you know, coming through and was really at the end of his recovery, and to talk about how far he's come. And I get that, because he wants it to be a positive story, and he wants people to see that even if you are from a working class background, even if you've made lots of mistakes and you have suffered with addiction, that you can come out the other side and get a happy ending. And that's such a great positive message to promote. But I just feel like there was some stuff in here near the end that was just skimmed over a bit, that I think we should have had a wee bit more detail on to have made this book as powerful and impactful as it could have been. So in the end, I ended up rating this a 2-star. Again though, it's nothing to do with Aidan's story, it's just to do with how the writing made that story then come across. I think that if you are interested in people's journeys through addiction, then this is a book that you should definitely pick up. I think it's something that you will enjoy, and I think that if you are from West Lothian, it might just be interesting to have a wee read about a guy who also grew up in West Lothian. So like, check it out. I am glad that I have read it, even though it was only a 2-star. The book was really powerful, and it definitely packs a punch. Aidan has had some life, let me tell you. I just didn't really get on with the writing as much as I feel like I could have, if there could have been some editorial changes. I then decided to pick up An Elderly Lady Is Up to No Good by Helene Thurston. So Ange bought me this, and I don't remember if it was last year for my birthday or last year for my Christmas, but she purchased it, and it's been sitting on my shelf, and it's been one of those ones that I have always been like, right, I'm going to pick that up, I'm going to pick that up, I'm going to pick that up, and I just never got around to it because it's so small. It's something that I wanted to sit down and just really read in the one sitting, and like trying to get the time where I can do that is a wee bit difficult. So with being off work, I thought it would be the perfect time just to pick it up, and this is almost like a wee short story collection to begin with, going into a longer story about our main character Maud. And Maud is an old lady, well, an elderly lady, and she is so long in the tooth and so sick of people's bullshit that she just decides she's going to start murdering them if they get in her road, which like is brilliant. I have said for long enough that I don't feel like there are enough older characters in books, and I feel like there should be. Like, my gran is honestly my best pal. She's like the funniest person on the planet. I love going to see her, I love her stories. She comes away with like the funniest stuff. Somebody should write a book about my gran. But I just feel like they're such characters, and they've had such life experiences, and they aren't represented enough in books. And you know, I really love when books do have a character where it's an older person and they're just living their best life. And let me tell you, Maud was living her best life. Like, might not seem like it, but she was. She was a hoot of a character, and I really had fun reading about her. I thought she was so funny, she was so blunt and to the point, and some of the antics that she got up to in this book was hysterical. I love how she played on her age, how she played on societal stereotypes, and how people would perceive her being an elderly lady, and she used it all to her advantage, and she was just class. I feel like, murder aside, we should all be a bit more mod. I thought that this was absolutely great. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I will definitely need to pick up the second one now. Even though there's a second one, just a disclaimer, I am not counting this as a series. Is it cheating if I don't count this as a series now? I'll think about it. I ended up rating this a 4-star. It was an absolute hoot, and I just really enjoyed it. And read it if you want to read about an old lady committing murder, because it was great. I then read The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell, and I buddy read this with Becca from Read Becca, and it was a fun time buddy reading it with her. It was my first buddy read with her, and I had this on my shelf. I know it's not usually the type of book that I would pick up because it is quite historical fiction-y, but I picked it up because it sounded like it could be really creepy and therefore might be a wee bit gothic horror-y, so I decided to give it a go, and I'm glad I did. So we have our main character, Elsie. She is pregnant and recently widowed. She gets sent out to her family's, well, her deceased husband's family manor to see out the rest of her pregnancy and to give birth to her kid, and there's creepy shenanigans that happen. So this book was a bit hit and miss for me, to be honest. The first 3/4 of the book I really didn't enjoy that much. I felt like the characters were really interchangeable, and I felt like nothing really was happening. Like, there was no creepiness, there was no spookiness. It just read like a standard historical fiction. The author was almost trying to make some interesting points, but she wasn't really pushing any of the themes far enough to make a point. So it does its standard historical fiction thing where it discusses, you know, women's place in society, women's place in the family, and how society views them. But again, it didn't really push those themes anywhere, and it didn't really make a point. So that was a wee bit disappointing. It made the point about women in that day and age being accused of witchcraft, but again, like, literally somebody just gets accused, and then it didn't do anything with that point, which was really disappointing. The last quarter of this book, however, was brilliant. The creepiness that I was waiting for, it came in absolute troves. It was really creepy, freaky. It was giving me like Weeping Angels vibes from Doctor Who, which we love. But unfortunately for me, the last quarter being absolutely dino doesn't make the book worth a read, basically. There was just so much of nothingness and no enough creepiness for me. I feel like if the creepiness started earlier on and we got to sit with that for a wee while, it could have really helped build some tension, whereas the last quarter of the book just went like at 100 miles a minute. There's a bit of a twist, and I don't want to spoil it, but Becca made some really interesting points, some points that I didn't actually pick up on around the societal commentary around that time, around disability. If you've read this book, then I'm sure you know what I'm on about, but it was points that I hadn't picked up on, so I'm really glad that I actually buddy read this with Becca, because she picked up on something that would have totally have passed by me, because I don't read a lot of historical fiction, so I don't really know a lot about how disability was perceived in this time. So that was brilliant, and it actually then affected my rating of the book. I originally rated it a 3-star. It was quite middle of the road, but like I say, the last bit really ramped up. Although I didn't enjoy the character work, I enjoyed the setting, and I enjoyed the last quarter of the book's plot. But I really enjoyed Laura's writing style. I felt like it was really accessible, it wasn't too flowery, and although it was historical fiction, I felt like it was just quite an easy to follow style, whereas I find some historical fictions quite wordy and la-di-da, and I don't really get on with it. So I really did like the writing style, so I rated it a 3-star originally, but then after hearing Becca's final thoughts and after her talking me through some of the points that I don't want to discuss for spoiler reasons, I ended up rating it a 2-star in the end, because I think that the author made quite an error, and that should reflect in the rating of the book. I don't like when an author perpetuates stereotypes when they are negative stereotypes, or where, like, if they're going to perpetuate a negative stereotype, then I feel like there should be a learning from it, or again, they should make a point, and I don't feel like they did make a point. They just perpetuated a negative stereotype, which was a bit poor patter for me. So it ended up being a 2-star in the end. I'm still glad that I read it though, because I actually have another Laura Purcell book on my shelf called The Corset, and I have swithered about whether or not to read it, because I got it in a book box. It's a beautiful copy, but it doesn't really sound like my type of book. Again, it's a bit like historical fiction-y, and when I was doing an unhaul recently, I considered unhauling it, but I decided to keep it because I knew I was going to read this month with Becca, and now having read this, I think that I might give Laura Purcell another chance, because I did like her writing. So maybe the other story will be a wee bit more up my street, or I'll regret it and I'll just sit down in a couple of months' time and tell you how terrible that book also is. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying everything that you're reading at the moment. I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who has came and joined me on the channel recently, and everybody on BookTube who always supports my videos and always gives me shout outs in their videos. I recently just hit 350 subscribers, which is just amazing and blows my mind that so many people want to come and hang out with me and chat about books. So thank you all so much, it really does mean a lot. And if you're new here, thanks for coming and joining and listening to me ramble and swear about books. It is appreciated. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!